Hello and welcome to this videocast. I'm Parikshit Luthra. CNBC-TV18 and Zetwerk are kickstarting a special series on PLI-led growth in IT hardware manufacturing. On the 1st of July this year, the central government launched the revised scheme for production-linked incentive schemes for IT hardware. The financial allocation of this policy is 17,000 crore, which is double that of the first version of the scheme. Spread over a 6-year period, the policy incentivizes domestic production of laptops, computers, tablets, servers, and ultra-small form factor devices. Out of 40 applicants, 10 have started production and 25 are expected to start production from April 24. The scheme provides 5% incentive on incremental sales and an additional 3% incentive if they use India-made components, subsystems, or inputs. How will this scheme, which has attracted global manufacturers as well, contribute to increasing India's manufacturing footprint in IT hardware? What more enabling policies and training of manpower would be needed to make India an alternative manufacturing destination to the likes of Vietnam and China? Joining us to speak about PLI-led growth and what more needs to be done are Rahul Sharma, co-founder of Zetwerk, and Pankaj Mohindru, chairman of Indian Cellular and Electronics Association. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Mohindru, let me begin with you. How do you think the revised PLI scheme for IT hardware is helping the industry and really kicking off the growth of the IT sector, the IT hardware sector in India?
So this was, we missed it the first time around, frankly, because we got so confident after the smartphone, the mobile phone PLI, the roaring success, that I think we were very conservative. And much more outlay was required because this is a hard nut to crack. We've not done well in this over last few decades, and something really substantial had to be done. But at the same time, the aspirations of value addition and building the entire supply chain had to be configured into the scheme. So that's why $2 billion plus 17,000 crores, that's the outlay. And I think what is going to happen because of this is that the entire supply chain will get set in, because it's a very compulsive scheme. The incentive to the final producer, the PLI allottee, keeps becoming sweeter as he keeps buying domestically manufactured products. And in some cases, like SOC, the incentive, if you configure on the SOC, it will be as much as 15%. So putting all this together, I think this scheme will be a roaring success. We have targeted 24 billion as the IT hardware production number from 4 billion at the moment, which is a 600% increase. I don't think we'll achieve that in 26, but I think 27 or 28, we will have this 600% growth in IT hardware, which will contribute a lot to the 300 billion vision of electronic manufacturing.
All right, so clearly this is a high growth sector. Rahul, I'd like to ask you about Zetwerk. Give us a sense of how you are looking to benefit from the PLI scheme and also companies who are getting incentives under it.
So the best part about the whole scheme has been, as Sir said, creating an ecosystem supply chain of not only the end manufacturer and the brand, but also for the component ecosystem as well. Zetwerk in itself doesn't qualify for the PLI, but what we're trying to do is figure out partners with whom we can co-invest. Capital, of course, remains one of the core constraints for growth, and hence we're able to figure out partners who have the capability and then clubbing it together with our know-how of the industry. At the same time, we are also looking at adding component ecosystem, because there is a 3% top up to the incentive which the government is giving to the PLI holder, and that's where a lot of companies like ours would be able to create a component ecosystem, which wasn't possible before, but with the ability of the PLI and it providing the platform for other companies as well, helps all of us to be part of this whole scheme, where we also see the growth not only in the end manufacturing, but creating a component ecosystem as well.
Right. You recently commissioned a 50,000 square feet factory in Noida, Uttar Pradesh for consumer electronics. Give us a sense of your manufacturing footprint capacity there right now. What all in consumer electronics are you focusing on, and where do you plan to take this to in the next 5 to 10 years?
So we have expanded the capacity from 50,000 square feet to 2.5 lakh square feet. That has been the kind of policy making which is enabling the growth for all of us. It's majorly driven by the phased manufacturing program by the government. we are able to produce almost 2 million devices a month. These are hearable, wearable devices, and the growth in itself is crazy. And as we see it happening, every year the phased manufacturing program is kicking in. And every year we're going deeper and deeper into components. Earlier we were only doing assembly, now we're looking at 2 component manufacturing within the start of this year itself. And as we enter the next year, we're looking at another component manufacturing. And the intention in the hearable wearable space, the one where we are set up the facility in Noida, has been to create an integrated supply chain in next 2 to 3 years, where we're able to deliver almost every component that we can for that particular sector.
Right. Mr. Mohindru, coming back to you, when it comes to these PLI schemes, there are 2 objectives. One, to make sure we localize more in India, in the domestic market, and make your products more competitive export-wise as well. When it comes to localization, how much of IT hardware localization is happening in India currently, and how much will take a longer time frame, say about 5 to 10 years?
So, IT hardware is virtually an industry which is absent at the moment. There's very superficial manufacturing which is happening at the moment.
It's basically assembly.
Very little of that also. We are largely dependent on import of CBUs, completely built units. That's the status, and we must be cognizant about that, that we've failed to perform over the last 3 decades in this sector. I think that's acceptance of failure is very important. It's a very honest thing. Now, we are aiming to reach about 40 to 45% domestic value addition without semiconductors and system on chip. That's the target which what he said. And I just want to also add to what Rahul was saying. You don't need to be a PLI allotee in the scheme. The whole ecosystem has to be set up. So you can be a charger manufacturer, a battery pack manufacturer, you could be in mechanics, you could be in display assembly.
Because local sourcing is incentivized for the company who is getting PLI incentives.
Yes. So they will be, you know, as they ramp up, they'll be looking for these capacities. So my guidance is that entrepreneurs should quickly set up these capacities. And very large capacities at the bottom, which is the foundational industries, are also being set up now.
Right.
You know about the Micron investment, 2, 3 other big investments we are going to announce very soon in the core industries, foundational industries like semiconductors, display, cells. That's happening. So what Rahul is talking about is the layer on the top, the sub-assemblies down to the foundational industries.
Right.
That has to come into shape now.
Right. You know, it's often said that when it comes to the edge, the expertise, the skills, the talent that China or a Vietnam has when it comes to electronic manufacturing, it will take a long time for India to have that. Now, we don't have so much time. It's often said that when it comes to China +1, there is only a 3 to 5 year window. What all do you think we need to do in order to, one, make sure we train the manpower in the right manner, you have the right policy framework to have a core electronic manufacturing system?
You see, the entire ecosystem has to kick in. India is not going to be a sectoral economy. It's going to be the next big economy of the world, including the next big economy in electronics. So we have to, I like this very much that we don't have time. I really like that. It's a very, very smart input. We really don't have time. We have to be very feverish. But on the flip side, we are very encouraged by what we see of our manpower or, you know, women power, how they are able to achieve optimum results within a few weeks. Untrained people, when we brought them to the shop floor, young girls, 19-year-old in Sri Prambadur or near Bangalore, when they've come to the shop floor, in 6 to 8 weeks, they are matching standards which are there in China and Vietnam. I think it's the great hunger of these young folks that they want to excel. So the rest of the ecosystem, the training in specialized verticals is important, and very quickly we have to ramp up. Like I'm telling you about the academy for what is coming up for semiconductors. We have to do a lot of capacity building, and I think work is going on all fronts.
Right.
So I'm very optimistic.
Rahul, coming to you, when it comes to manufacturing, clearly there will be a lot of opportunities for companies like yours. The Indian government wants the likes of Apple, Samsung to manufacture more in India, have more contract manufacturing as well with Indian companies. What are the next policy steps, according to you, which are needed? What are some of the regulatory hassles that you face, which probably slow down growth in a sense?
I think government has been very forthcoming in providing platforms for fast tracking the whole manufacturing wave. Of course, incentives like PLI definitely help. What more can be done is enabling startups to do it a lot more, because a lot of startups might not qualify for the PLIs. They are really relatively new, whereas the schemes are based on past performances, which doesn't incentivize startups to enter this particular space. However, the forums are available where we have been able to get incentives, even though we were not the ones who were eligible, because we could provide something to the end customer. That's one particular aspect. Another is how can we work on the design part. That is where the young blood can come into picture. The old space has been dominated by traditional manufacturers, but the startups can add a lot more value on the design-led manufacturing, and that's where you have said about talent being not there. This is how talent can be created. India today probably has one of the largest R&D centers for GE and Intel. These are the same folks who would end up coming out of them and making it for the other companies while they are based out of India. And that's how the talent would get created. That's another place where we feel the government has been really pushy and has been supportive in our growth as well. Other than that, a lot of state governments have been very active, where they have been able to create tech parks and provide incentives for the laborers, for the workers in the factory. And all of that has led to a belief that it's possible. And once you have the mindset, it becomes easier to make it happen. And you probably figure out ways to make it happen as well.
All right. If I were to ask you, Rahul, for Zetwerk, what would be the tipping point? What kind of a contract or collaboration would you be seeking, which you feel would be a tipping point for your company in IT hardware manufacturing?
I think there will be so many tipping points. There won't be exactly one of it. And I was talking to Sir before in terms of bringing in technologies to the country. That will be a great tipping point for us. There's a lot of manufacturing that's happening. If we can bring in technology which makes it for India, that enables further growth for export opportunities. Today we manufacture a lot of stuff that is being developed by outside country. How do we bring in those technologies within the country and create it for India, and with time, once we achieve scale and the right cost structures, start exporting to the world outside. And that probably would be a tipping point. There are many such technologies in different spaces. We're always looking out for opportunities.
Right. No, good to hear that. Mr. Mohindru, coming back to you on the question of talent, we were hearing and from companies who are looking to set up semiconductor plants in India, foundries as well, that if you want to get highly skilled manpower which can work in semiconductor foundries, which is really the core of the semiconductor business, it's very expensive to get such people from around the world, such talent. How do we overcome that? Do these schemes currently address that, or do you think we'll have to come up with some other kind of model, public, private together, in order to make sure that those kind of skill sets come to India? We either import talent or we train our own employees for the future.
We are in a sweet spot actually. I'm very, I'm not at all pessimistic about this. I'm in fact overtly optimistic about it. The manpower for the future of the world semiconductor industry will come from India. Not only in India, but even in the West. Even in Japan, even in Taiwan, because these nations populations are declining. Also the mindset, you would have heard of the Great Resignation, the concept of the Great Resignation. Now, people in these countries are not wanting to go into fabs in zero moisture in a space suit. They would rather, do jobs like this, or which are, very attractive, in policy or in investment banking, etc. But they don't aspire to be there. This manpower is going to be provided for by India. So we have to have a world view. The number of people we have to train for our semiconductor industry is not the small 10, 20,000 because of the fabs which will come up in India, but maybe 200,000 people for rest of the world. That's the target which we have to achieve in the next 10 years. So don't be surprised that the next new fabs in the US, like you have the IT professionals, you have 30% of the manpower from India.
Right, right.
For that, we'll need real online, kind of training. And we are writing a paper on that. We'll release it very soon.
Okay. Now, I'd like to ask you, one, of course, PLI schemes is something that every global CEO who comes to India to visit his factories or have conversations the government speaks about, saying that these incentives are very important and they definitely attract global manufacturers. But at the same time, one common sentence that all of them speak about is the need for policy stability, regulatory clarity, and a 10-year roadmap. Do you think that that is something we need to work on, and also the business sentiment?
Yes, I would say we are a nation in the making, but we have become very honest about our disabilities. I think this is a big leap we see. We don't see that chip on the shoulder which we used to see 20 years back, 30 years back. We are seeing integrity, intellectual integrity and honesty today, that we are confronting our issues. Like the PLI, how did it come? We first did a disability report, which was very uncomfortable for the government. That you are staring at disabilities in your face. And then what happened after that is that those disabilities were recognized, and a PLI was the outcome of those disabilities. Now, what are we going to do after that? This disability stack, we have to chip away at it, whether it is power or land or manpower or efficiencies, logistics, and there is work going on in that. We have to become the most competitive nation in the world, but the most important thing is predictability in taxation and the business sentiment. That is extremely important, because I think one of the main disabilities of India is that chill factor which you are referring to, the uncertainty. And business and trade and manufacturing doesn't like uncertainty.
Right, right.
The capital follows when you have the roadmap of deep certainty. And I think you've pointed it out very right. That is something which is not difficult to do. It doesn't cost too much money. It's just straightening the mindset.
Is that a concern that you also get from investors and companies that you speak about, you aspire or pitch to?
So of course, that's always a question that gets asked, whether this wave will last for long enough. But I think the opportunity size in the country is huge. So what we believe is, if it's not going to be a $300 billion industry, it's probably going to be a $200 billion industry. Where we are today and to where we have to land, I think it's a huge opportunity. Irrespective of it not playing out as well as it is supposed to be, even then it's an exciting opportunity. So the business mindset has been of excitement.
Right, and everyone says that India has a huge potential to consume.
Right.
It will remain a very important and market in terms of demand for the future. But Rahul, in terms of the manufacturing footprint and also the growth opportunity that Mr. Mohindru was pointing out, give us a sense of the kind of components and assemblies you would like to get in for the future, and what kind of a ramp up would this need on your part?
So I think we are excited about a lot of spaces, specifically the ones where...
Are you right now tailoring your business plans around PLI applicants in the IT hardware space?
So one part of our business plan is around IT hardware PLI space. How do we get into a place where the government is also looking at providing incentives? At the same time, the industry is also looking out to move supply chain. You don't have to convince anyone to do it. So it becomes easier, and hence a large portion of our effort goes into these particular initiatives. So anything related to IT hardware, anything related to mobile manufacturing, for example, camera modules in it, and the likes of it. Other than that, we are also looking at R&D. That's a core part of our agenda. The reason is, how do we in next 2 to 3 years become a R&D-led organization? Because the manufacturing wave, though will last for long, we need to become a R&D-oriented country as a whole, and as a company we are focusing on that. So a lot of our efforts are going to that space as well. Other than that, telecom is another place where we want to have a larger say, because that is another industry which is seeing a lot of changes, a lot of manufacturing moving in, and that is still untouched, and that's another place we feel we will be investing a lot of effort and bandwidth. We of course require a lot of land for creating a lot of manufacturing space. A lot of talent needs to be trained in that particular aspect, and hence a lot of collaboration. Our growth has been a more collaborative growth. We are the new kid in the town, and we love to participate and collaborate with anyone possible, so that we can fast track the growth and capture a larger pie of the opportunity.
Right. Now, one important aspect that comes out of your conversation is giving some of these big manufacturers like Apple, Intel, Dell, HP, a local supply chain as well. And we had seen that during the COVID-19 pandemic, during the Ukraine-Russia war, and we don't know how the Israel-Hamas war will impact, but clearly there was a big jolt to supply chains. How are we doing as far as the Indian local supply chain resilience is concerned, Mr. Mohindru, and what more do we need to do, both from an industry point of view and a government point of view, for resilience?
I think the scale is the most resilient thing. I would only say we have to build massive scale. We've grown from 30 billion to 100 billion. That has given us resilience, because when scale comes, you know, people go into that industry. That's how Rahul has got excited and he's investing in that. So the next leap from 100 to 300 billion is dependent on GVCs, their lead firms and their supply chain, and building Indian champion companies. These are the two pillars of our growth which we have to achieve. What will happen as a result of this? A lot of diversification will happen away from the one geography which dominates electronic manufacturing. So focus on scale, scale, scale. That is the most important thing.
Right.
Don't focus on, you know, unnecessary import substitution, value addition, and 96 is greater than 4. So we have to look at, even if we take out 20 out of the 96, still 76 is greater than 4.
Okay.
So scale, globalization.
Okay, my final questions to both our panelists. Rahul, starting with you, what after the PLI schemes? Incentives will not last forever. How are you preparing for a time without incentives?
So we have seen manufacturing evolve over the last 2-3 years, where earlier we were working because there were incentives. Now we are ourselves competitive because we have achieved something what Sir is calling scale. Scale is a substitute for cost. If you have large enough scale, you would be able to make goods at the cost which are globally competitive, and you would see it happening when India starts exporting without the incentives, and that's how we feel we would be ready, by creating scale at a place where we're able to be globally competitive.
Right. Mr. Mohindru, would you agree that we should not be having this conversation about another PLI scheme 5 or 6 years down the line?
I don't think so. We will have sectoral incentivization wherever there are gaps. But if I read out to you the vision of the various verticals, starting mobile phones, we achieved scale, we exported 90,000 crores last year. IT hardware, we are importing almost everything. We have to turn it on its head. Scale, $15 billion, then export of $8-10 billion. Hearable wearables, right? He's already started talking about scale and that they are competitive. So I think in the next 3 years, our exports should touch $5 billion of hearable wearables. And consumer electronics and auto electronics, strategic electronics, industrial electronics, LED, telecom equipment. All of these will depend on scale. Scale will come from GVCs and Indian champions. That's how the supply chain will build. It's actually very simple.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, Rahul and Mr. Mohindru. It was a fantastic conversation on PLI-led growth for Indian manufacturing in IT hardware. We were talking about PLI 2.0, and clearly there is a lot of excitement related to the scheme, and there is a belief that there will be huge growth in domestic manufacturing and strengthening of local value chains and scale creation over here in India as a result of the scheme. Let's see how things progress over the years. Thank you very much for watching this special video cast. Goodbye.